The Sticks and Stones Afghan belongs to my D&D family of Afghans. D&D stands for Done and Done. This Afghan has a built-in border at the beginning, the end, and along the two sides. By selecting a light neutral color such as soft white, pale gray, or beige, the overall stitch pattern stands out and looks sensational in any decor. To demonstrate the techniques, I'm working on a swatch, but you can make the Afghan any size you want. Follow the instructions in the description below to download the pattern for free. Start with a slip knot. Then chain 194 for the smaller Afghan and 229 for the larger Afghan. Roll the chain to expose the third loop on the back. They look like little bumps. Working in that third loop, slip stitch in each stitch until the end. Make sure that you start with the very first stitch. So simple, yet this edge is finished and allows the open work stitches starting on the next row to hold their shape. No additional border is required. You've just completed the D&D Foundation row. The Sticks and Stones stitch pattern is established on the next row, so this is the only row where you need to pay attention and count the stitches. Row 1 starts by working a chain 3. This will count as the first double crochet. Inserting the hook under the 2 loops of the slip stitches in the D&D Foundation, work 1 double crochet in each of the next 2 stitches. You've just formed the 3 stitch edge border. Now chain 1 and skip 3 stitches. Then work a V-stitch in the next stitch. The V-stitch is a combination of stitches. Here's how to make it. Crochet 1 double crochet, chain 2, and 1 double crochet in the same stitch. Do you see the V? Then chain 1 and skip 2 stitches. Work 1 cluster in the next stitch. A cluster is made by yarning over the hook, inserting the hook into the stitch, and pulling up a loop. Once you have 3 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through 2. Now we're going to repeat this. Yarn over, insert hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2. Now you have 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over, insert hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2. You have 4 loops on hook. Yarn over, insert, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Now you have 5 on the hook. When you get to 5, yarn over and pull through all 5. That closes the cluster. Chain 1 to lock it down. Now you have a V-stitch and you have a cluster stitch. Now you're going to do another V-stitch. Skip 3 stitches and work the next V-stitch in the next stitch. Now you're going to be repeating the V-stitch and the cluster across the entire row. Now remember, the V-stitch is 1 double crochet, chain 2, 1 double crochet in the same stitch. Then you're going to chain 1 before you move on to the cluster stitch. Skip 2 before a cluster and work a cluster in the next stitch. By yarning over, pulling up a loop, yarning over, pulling through 2, 4 times, so that you have a total of 5 loops on the hook before you pull through and do all 5. There you go. 5 loops on the hook. Yarn over and pull through all 5 and chain 1. Skip 3 before the V-stitch and work 1 double crochet, chain 2, and 1 double crochet into that stitch. Now you have the 5 stitches remaining. You're going to skip 2, and then you're going to work 1 double crochet in the last 3 stitches. Don't forget to chain 1 before you start those double crochets. Those 3 double crochets are the border stitches. You've just completed your first row. You should have 3 edge stitches on each end and 26 or 31 clusters, the stones, depending on if you were working the small or the large Afghan. There will also be a V-stitch, the sticks, between the clusters and on the ends inside the 3 edge stitches. Begin row 2 with chain 3. This counts as the first double crochet of the edge stitches. Then work 1 double crochet in each of the next 2 edge stitches. And chain 1. You're going to work a cluster in the very center of the first V-stitch. And chain 1 to lock it down. And then you're going to place a V-stitch in the top of the cluster. That stitch is the chain. That is the cluster stitch, the top of the cluster stitch. And so you're going to do a V-stitch there, which is a double crochet, chain 2, and a double crochet, and a chain 1. In the next V-stitch, you're going to repeat what we just did and work another cluster. So you're going to work a cluster in the center of the V-stitches, and you're going to work a V-stitch in the top of each cluster of the row below. When you get to the end of the row and only 3 edge stitches remain, chain 1. Then work 1 double crochet in each of the 3 edge stitches to form the border. How easy was that? Chain 3 and turn to start row 3. Row 3 is very similar to row 2, except you start with the V-stitch. Work 1 double crochet in each of the next 2 edge stitches and chain 1. Now start your main patterning with the V-stitches going into the top of the clusters and the cluster placed into the center of the V-stitches. And don't forget to end the row with the 3 border stitches. You will repeat the last 2 rows until the piece measures 60 or 72 inches for the large Afghan. I usually end after row 2. This leaves a cluster on each end inside the edge stitches. Similar to the D&D Foundation at the beginning, the finishing row is based on slip stitches. Slip stitch under the 2 loops at the top of the next 3 double crochets. The next stitch is a chain. Instead of struggling to get your hook into the chain, just slip stitch into the space below. Then work 1 slip stitch into the top of the cluster. and 1 slip stitch into the next space under the chain. Now work 1 slip stitch into the first double crochet of the V-stitch. Now you have 2 chains. The first chain you can work by working a slip stitch into the space. The second chain you must work into the chain to give a neat edge. Now work 1 slip stitch into the second double crochet of the V-stitch and 1 slip stitch into the space. And you're back to the cluster. Continue in this fashion across the row, and I'll meet you at the end. When you reach the last 3 edge stitches, just slip stitch into each one and cut your yarn. The only thing you need to do at this point is weave in your ends. When you're done, you're done. I hope you enjoyed making the Sticks and Stones Afghan. Please take a moment to subscribe to the Twisted Yarns YouTube channel to get notifications when new videos are available. Happy crocheting!